Welcome to the Crack the Code podcast. Super excited here today. Today I've got with me Jennifer Arthurton, who's the founder and creator of Old Chicks No Shit, a community and a podcast designed to inspire and support midlife women in chasing their dreams and creating their kick-ass next chapter. Jennifer is a midlife mentor, podcast host, writer, and speaker. Having made her own midlife course corrections, she's a passionate advocate in the inherent power and wisdom that women possess at a time when they often feel overlooked in society and doubt themselves the most. Jennifer regularly appears as guests on blogs and podcasts and as a speaker at women's events. And I know she's got a big one coming up this weekend. So welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you so much for having me.
I love talking about this stuff because I just get tired of hearing women at the sort of mid-age saying that they're too old or, why bother doing anything, whether it's to do with their health or anything. And the way we can live these days, we don't know how long our life is going to be. And if you're at, say, 40, 50 age group and you're living to around 80, we have a whole nother lifetime ahead of us.
Yeah, it's the longest chapter of our lives yet.
Yeah. And the time when we get to spend the most on ourselves, because most of us, if we've had kids, some people have raised kids or not, but it's time to really focus on ourselves. And should be a little bit more confident, even though sometimes we got shit to get rid of, like emotional baggage or whatever. Yep. And I know that you have some tips for helping women get unstuck and maybe making some decisions or moving forward. So I'd love you to share that with us.
Yeah. So first of all, it's not our fault that we doubt ourselves and that, like we have the why bother your message, or I'm too old or it's too late or whatever that is because we live in a culture, where the messaging back to us about what it means to be a 50 or 60-year-old woman is anything but uplifting. We're considered less valuable, less relevant. We're practically invisible. And, we live in this society, and even though we might not consciously buy into it, subconsciously, it's being pounded into our brains at every opportunity. I mean, between like how we see people treated to what we see in the media to the cultural narrative, it's not our faults, right? Mm-hmm. We're just absorbing this. But what we can do then is to change the way that we think about ourselves. And that's really the whole mission of Old Chicks No Shit. So I have a guide that is called 5 Ways to Get Unstuck and Create Your Kick-Ass Next Chapter. And basically came out of kind of my own story, my own journey of learning it the hard way about how to go from, feeling completely stuck and not knowing what's next to creating, your kick-ass next chapter. And your kick-ass next chapter is what I consider to be the life that is truly aligned with who you are as an authentic person, right? And you can't help but love your life if that's what it is.
Right.
Right. So the first thing I always tell women is to stop what you are doing. And I don't mean stop what you are doing and then, hit the couch and watch, reruns of Downton Abbey. I mean, just take a pause for a second, because as women, we are constantly doing everything for everyone, making sure everybody's taken care of, and we fall last on our own to-do lists. In fact, we're so busy for most of our lives doing all the things that we completely lose any connection we have with ourselves. And so when we come to think about the next chapter, we're staring into this, big old black hole because we've never given time or consideration to what's important to us. And so the first thing I tell women is it's really important to start rebuilding, or in some cases, building the relationship with yourself. And that requires, like any relationship, spending time and to connect. So I say, whether you have 5 minutes available to you, 10 minutes available to you, 20 minutes or half an hour, spend some time with yourself. Not you with your phone, not you with your book, just you and you, so that you have some space to be able to hear yourself breathe for a minute, right? Yeah. To ponder your own thoughts. Like, what thoughts are actually coming up, that aren't related to somebody else?
Yeah.
Right. And spend that time, right? Yeah. Just connecting in with who you are, and maybe ask yourself questions like, what's making me happy right now? What do I want? How am I feeling in this particular moment? Right? Like, ask yourself questions like you were on a date with somebody and trying to get to know them, right? Like, building that connection. And, now, however small you start, there is no right or wrong way to do any of this, right? Like if it's
Mhm.
3 minutes available to you now, then take it and run with it. But I think what you find over time is that that time expands,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And for me at the very beginning, when I was in the worst of, my burnout and all that kind of stuff, like for me, like a 5 minute walk in the forest was all I could manage.
Yeah. And we're so
Right.
used to just filling up space with nothingness.
Yeah.
Like we can't just sit down and enjoy a cup of tea and just enjoy the scenery. We're picking up our phone and flipping through Facebook. Like we're
Yeah.
never spending about even 5 minutes, and everybody has 5 minutes.
Everybody has 5 minutes. Yes.
Mhm.
The next thing I always tell the women in my community is to check your stories. So, what are the stories you're telling yourself about what's possible for your life? So we all have, and you know this well from the work that you do. We all have, stories and beliefs ingrained, mostly subconsciously ingrained,
Mhm.
that really affect how we show up in our lives and really affect how we see ourselves. And so catching yourself in the awareness of these stories, like, I'm too old, or it's too late, or I don't have enough time. Ask yourself, is this really true? Do I know this to be 100% true? Is there a way that I can work around it? Like, or, I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough, right? Are you really not smart enough? Or have you just not learned the thing? Could you
Yeah.
learn the thing? Right? Like, challenge some of those stories and beliefs. But the first thing is spend the time to become aware of what those stories and beliefs are and then challenge them. Or you can simply do like what I do when the fear gremlins and the doubts pop up. I literally say out loud, no, we're not doing that today.
Yeah.
And it's literally a pattern interrupt to remind myself that yes, they're there. So it's the awareness that they're there, and B, that I have a choice not to buy into it at that particular moment.
Right. And sometimes it's not even our own, like if it's subconscious stuff, it could be stuff that we've inherited or absorbed from
Exactly.
other people, just stories that people have told us, and our, young subconscious brain absorbed it in. It's not even true. So if you can
Yeah,
get around
exactly.
that, release
Yeah.
it or get around that and realize that most of the stuff that's going through our brain isn't even true stuff.
Right. It's just things that we think are true, but they're not true.
Yeah.
Like I had, when I was 6 years old and was learning how to print, I had a teacher who used to tell me all the time that I was a bad writer.
Hmm.
So, and I'm not writing as in constructing sentences, I'm talking printing letters, right? But I hung on to that idea that I was a bad writer all the way up until my adulthood, until like maybe a few years ago. I'm like, oh, I'm actually a really good writer. Yes, my handwriting is still messy, but I'm actually a really good writer. But it's easy to see how those connections and untruths can be made,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And then the third most important thing that I tell women is to dare to dream. So when we were kids, we dreamt naturally. Like we thought about who we were going to marry, what kind of house we were going to live in, how many kids we were going to have, all of that type of stuff about our lives. But first of all, our dreams kind of ended at the point where we got married and had kids. We never thought like, okay, what am I going to do after my kids leave home? Like that's not part of the fairy tale story.
Yeah.
So we had that. And then, as kids, inevitably some adult would say to us, get your head out of the clouds, get back into reality. And then we did, and we got swept away by reality, and we completely forgot how to dream. We don't fantasize about our lives, about, what would I like to do next? We don't spend time doing that. And so creating a practice of visualization is so critically important because, as you know, the subconscious brain doesn't know the difference between real and imagined,
Mhm.
right? And what we're envisioning for ourselves, our brain is like half thinking is already done. And we can, it paves the way for us to be able to do the thing. But more importantly than that, having a visualization practice is a way for us to try things on, right? Like, let
Yeah.
me imagine myself as a stunt motorcycle rider, for example, right?
Uh-huh.
Like,
Yeah.
what do I love about it? What do I hate about it? Right? Like, just play with ideas and just see what comes up for you. Because without dreaming, we're missing critical pieces of information about what's inside us.
Yeah.
I tell all my clients that, the dreams and desires that we have for our lives are not random. They don't just like pop out of nowhere. They are parts of us that are looking to be expressed. So play with them a little bit. Give them
Yes.
space to expand, give them space to grow within you. Because, most of us feel stuck because we have no clarity about what we want. And, through the process of getting to know ourselves, of checking our stories and visualizing, like fantasizing about what we would like to do, we're like, all of the answers to everything we need is inside us. And
Yeah.
those are the ways that which we bring them to the surface.
Yeah. And if we spend more time considering things that we would like to have, what we do really want, there's more chance for it to happen and less time for us to be thinking about the negative things and the things that could be holding us
Yeah,
back. Because,
exactly.
you get what you think about most. If you're into the law of attraction and attracting what you want, be thinking more about what you do want, not what
Exactly.
you don't want. You get more of what you think about. So
Yeah,
thanks so much for
absolutely.
sharing that with us today. And so where can people go to get the rest of your tips?
So you can visit my website at oldchicksnoshit.com. So that's KNOW. And you can find me also on Instagram and Facebook of the same name. There is a guide, the 5 steps to get unstuck and create your kick-ass next chapter, on my website. Yeah, and as a free gift, you can just go and download it.
Yes, that's awesome. Thanks so much for sharing that with us today, Jennifer. And everybody, just remember, it's never too late to get started.